Welcome back to another Tips and Tricks Thursday. My name is Derek, and today I'm going to show you the basics to replacing the glass only on an iPhone. So let's get into the video. Replacing the glass on the iPhone is not the easiest thing to do, and the setup that is needed for this repair and the tools that are needed for this repair don't come cheap. And there's also quite a steep learning curve. Up front, the tools and equipment for this at minimum are going to run you a couple thousand, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error at the beginning. But once that is all taken care of, glass only repairs have proven to be much more profitable. Along with the not having to deal with any of the notifications, true tone transfer, all of the issues coming out with the different iOSs. So if this is something that you've been interested in, this is definitely the video for you. Something big to note though is I do make it look easier than it is. So keep that in mind. Let's get started. Alright, so here we've got an iPhone 12 screen. As you can see, we've got some pretty deep scratches. Something that a polished machine would not be able to get out without warping the glass severely. So the first step is obviously to have a good and working display. Now you might be replacing the glass because it's broken or it's too scratched to buff out. Either way, the process is the same. Alright, so we're going to take the display. We're going to set it down here on this heat mat with suction. Got this set at 100 degrees Celsius, and we're going to let it vacuum down. This way it won't move on us. Now depending on your skill level, you can use 0.028 millimeter wire or 0.035 millimeter wire. Anything thicker than this, really you run the risk of damaging these displays. I'm going to take the wire and insert it in between the glass and the bezel, and we're going to keep tension down on the glass, and we're going to start to slice through the bezel. This one, a little thinner, gives you a better edge. It just breaks more, and we're just going to keep moving around until it starts to gets into the bezel. You'll see it finally start to give and get in, and as long as there's tension going down, it should miss the display or start miscutting into the display. And then we're going to work moving ourselves around towards the other corner here. Where things tend to go wrong in the removal of the glass is at the very beginning, where you insert the cutting wire. If done improperly, the cutting wire can start to enter layers of the display like the polarizer, digitizer, and cause damage that may not be fixable. But with proper technique, this step will become quite simple. This is rotating on me, so I'm just going to lock it down. So what I'm doing is I'm letting the wire come around the corner from under the display, not allowing it to come around the corner by pulling with my right hand. It's just my left hand pulling around the corner. Once we're around that corner, I'm going to switch from the 0.028 to the 0.035 because it breaks less, so it's easier to cut with. We really need to secure this. You want to hold the base. Certain models are easier to cut than others. The 12 is one of the harder out of the flat glass models. The 13 gets a little easier, the 14 gets even easier, and the 15 is, from my experience, the easiest to cut. I don't know if it's the thickness of the adhesive exactly or what, but it just is. Here I'm just going to cross over and cut through the bezel there, because there's nothing left for it to hold on to on the bezel, if that makes sense. Now that I've got all the way through it, we're just going to go one more time and remove any of the remaining part that might be sticking. So I'm just going to drop some alcohol in there help loosen up whatever's still holding on a part of the bezel. There it comes off like that. Okay, so we're going to take the display. I'm just going to connect it up so we can test it here to make sure nothing got damaged during the process. This cable's messing with me. You can see how the display is no longer kind of as curved as it was when it came off. It flattens out when it cools down. Okay, there's the Apple logo. We don't want to ever see lines or dead spots. It's going to be a little tricky to test the touch because our finger's going to stick to the adhesive that's still here, but we will be able to, you know, show that it's working. So my finger's going to stick a little bit. You can see it's working there. And the good test for touch is going to be to go to power it off and just to slide. And as long as it stays with the finger the whole time everywhere, then we're good. So disconnect the display and we'll move on to the next step. The second step is removing all of the old adhesive and cleaning the display for glass installation. All right, so now we'll take it onto this heat mat that we have it set at 100 degrees as well, and we'll line up the display with all of the little gaps that are in this pad. We're going to take this OCA remover and we're going to slowly and carefully remove the OCA from the display. So you keep this basically flush with the screen here and you make your way towards the top, and we're gently pushing on here with our fingers. Besides, it's going to start to get really hot. And what's really convenient about this tool is with a simple click of a button, this will rotate in the opposite direction because the adhesive likes to come off. See, I can go that way with it, running with it, or I can kind of pull it so that it walks up the adhesive, which is my preferred way to remove it. So if I want to go down this way, but I want it to be that same technique, all I have to do is click this, and now I can walk this way and pull the adhesive off like that and clear the adhesive off the tip. Now there are things you can do to help loosen the adhesive by adding some OCA adhesive remover like this X12 here. It's an OCA cleaning solution. You can use this multi-purpose glue remover, or you can just go at it with this and use something like acetone to clean off the residue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the border and we're going to try to clean up the adhesive on the bezel with this. All right, so now we're going to get rid of all of the little smudges and smears that are left from that process, and we're going to do that with some acetone. There's some other chemicals that you can use as well, but that's my preferred one. Okay, so we're going to be using some acetone here. You can use these like magic erasers, or you can just use, what I like to do is use a clean room wipe. These are surgical grade clean room wipes that you can find on mobilecentrics.com. Comes in a 440 pack, really cheap, but really good quality. Doesn't leave fibers behind. My favorite wipe. And as you can see here, with just a few little wipes, we have a nice clean area without any debris or dust. And so we'll just keep doing that as we work all the way around the display, removing all of this, all the smudges and smears without scraping the polarizer. This part I find to be extremely satisfying. The result is a perfectly clear and good display. So we'll go around the border, being gentle around any of the areas where the flex cables are. We don't want to damage them or cause any type of delamination. And we'll just go over it until we have every single last piece of old adhesive residue completely off the display. And we're also going to be getting rid of any of the debris on the bezel at the same time, so that we don't have any high points where we could potentially get bubbles around the border in the OCA layer when it comes time for the step after this, which is lamination. The next step is to install a new glass, and this is best done in a clean environment because dust and other debris may find their way onto the adhesive layer of the new glass and may just be visible once installed. And the only way to remove that speck of dust is to replace the glass again. Really nice to have is one of these green lights as well. As you can see, it illuminates all of the debris that's still on the screen. That way when we're about to go put the glass on, we can see if dust is floating down on top of the screen. So it's not a bad idea just to get one out while you're cleaning it. That way you can completely remove any and all of the dust and debris, and you won't be spending too much time in an area because you can see, oh, it's completely clean from debris. It may not be completely clean of streaks, which we'll touch it right before we put the glass on. We'll make sure there's no streaks or anything, because anything that remains on the screen is going to get pinched and stuck into the OCA layer, and it's permanent. And you have to, if you have any issues, you have to pull the glass back off, which means cutting it back off and then cleaning it again and going through this whole process. So you really want to make sure that this last step, when you go to laminate it, is a really clean process. So as you can see, it all looks clean at this angle, and then you can really see that half of it still needs to be cleaned when the light hits it. I find this to be really satisfying. All right, so for this next step, we're going to get out our new glass. This glass is for the 12/12 Pro. It is a 2-in-1 glass and OCA. The one alteration that I'm going to make is, because we left everything intact up top, including the earpiece, we're going to just gently remove that from this glass. And if we ever need one, we have a replacement for the 12/12 Pro, which is nice. Because this will be able to line up the earpiece right here, and the bezel will line up perfectly with the edge when we go to put this down. So one of the things that I like to do in preparation for this is we'll take the acetone and a wipe, and we're just going to go around and clean off the back of the OCA sheet here. This will get rid of any dust that's going to potentially leach onto the OCA when we remove the protector here. And I'm going to go around the border here because it tends to collect on that thin edge of OCA, a little bit of debris, and I don't want any of it to stay there, creating bubbles on the side. So we really want to remove any of it before we remove the OCA protector. Now we'll do our final cleaning of the display, completely removing any streaks, all of the dust, fingerprints, anything that's left on there. We want this to be pristine. All right, we have no dust, no debris on there. Nice and clean, ready to go. So what we'll do, because we're going to be doing this by eye, we'll take our OCA sheet, and I don't have any of the pull tabs with me right now, so I'm just going to use my fingernail. We'll get under on the sheet here, we're going to get under the edge without messing with the OCA. We'll gently peel it away, and then we'll pull off the OCA protector, keeping the OCA pointed down. And we're going to line up the earpiece at the top, and we'll keep everything nice and lined up properly all the way down to the bottom. Give it a little pressure in the middle here. We'll stick it on here before things start to basically self-laminate. Once the glass is aligned and the OCA layer has adhered in the middle of the display, it's time to go into the laminator. And we will stick it up here in this machine, and we'll put the clamps down. We'll go ahead and hit start on the machine. The vacuum pump will kick on. It'll start to pull a vacuum in here, and we have a countdown here of 20 seconds of vacuum, and you'll start to see some movement up here with the bubbles. And then at the 20-second mark, this is going to laminate to the display. So here in 3, 2, 1, just like that. And it's going to do that for 20 seconds as well. You can see here it's laminating for 20 seconds. And you can see that there are still some bubbles, but that will come out with the bubble remover here in about 8 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Now this is releasing. Vacuum will turn off. And now we can pop this out, lift up the lid, and we can inspect it. So we've got this big bubble here, a couple here, and here's a better view of it. We've got a few at the bottom there and a little at the top. We'll go and debubble this and we'll be good. The next step after the laminator is using an autoclave. This will debubble the display. If something went wrong in the lamination or before when the glass was being aligned, there may be some bubbles that won't come out. And there will be a lot of trial and error going into understanding how to place the glass, whether or not you use alignment molds or by eye, because it's a one shot, one stick that has to be done properly. Got this set at 45 degrees Celsius. We'll open the door here. We'll take our screen that's got the bubbles, and we just need to get out. They're at the bottom, the big one there on the side. We'll stick this in, close up the door, okay, and then I'm gonna hit start. The compressor will kick on. This will go up. Let it set at 5 minutes. We'll come back and see what it's done. All right, so this just finished. So let's take it out and see if we have any bubbles. All right, here it comes out. And do we see any bubbles? It looks good. Perfect. No big bubble there next to the flex. No bubbles here at the bottom. Nothing around the entire border. Still has a slightly dirty ear mesh. We can kind of clean that a little bit to give it a better presentation, but you can still see through the mesh, so it's gonna work. Yeah. All right, we're now gonna take it here and put it under UV light for 1.5 minutes. This process will kind of strengthen the OCA so that it won't delaminate in the future. So here we're almost done, and we'll take it out. All right. Now the final step with the method that I'm showing today is going to be adding additional adhesive around the bezel so that it has some strength to not want to separate from the glass. All right, so this next step, some would say is a little unnecessary. You don't necessarily have to do it, but I'm going to take some cold press here as we watch it go down the nozzle, and I'm going to pipe it into this little edge here in between the bezel and the glass. It'll kind of suck down inside a lot of the time. The surface tension will kind of pull it down into that teeny little gap that's there. And this will just reinforce the bezel to the glass. If I could stop shaking, just like that. And then I'm going to take my finger and we'll just kind of compress it in to that gap as well as we go up the side here. Yep. And I'm just going to take some isopropyl alcohol with the cloth, get it a little moist, nothing crazy. And we're just going to wipe off with one pass the excess glue. I guess that was 2 passes, but... And then we'll just do the same thing around each one of the sides. So we'll go around the corner here. Now, if you really want to, you can actually add some cold press before the lamination process. I've just occasionally had issues where I will be shaky and the adhesive will touch the display, and that'll definitely create a bubble. So I'm not going to try to then go ahead and clean it off. But if you're skilled enough, go for it. Add adhesive on the bezel before you put the glass on. And although I'm successful at doing it, it's too risky. 1 out of 5 is too much for me, where I have to do extra cleaning before laminating it. So this requires no real skill to put adhesive inside this little cap. We'll just smear it in there. And again, this whole thing is kind of unnecessary because of the adhesive that's already holding the bezel to the display. It just does definitely reinforce it. So now that I've gotten that adhesive there, we'll take our cloth, get it a little bit moist, and wipe off the excess. This kind of also pushes it even down further into that gap, whatever adhesive is going to make it into that gap. And we'll do the last top here, smearing it into that little crevice. We'll wipe down and we're done. Once that's done, the final step is to install and test. So let's do that. All right, so we've got the screen connected back up, got the proximity sensor assembly connected, all the shields back in. This thing's ready to go. The adhesive on the border is basically cured. If not, it's going to cure while it's installed. The only 2 screws we'll have left is the pentalobe. Right before we close it up, I'm just going to test it one more time to make sure the lamination process went smoothly, which it should have. There we've got our Apple logo. We've got no lines on the display. We'll go ahead and take this off for now. Set it aside. A little smudges from my fingerprints here, but go ahead and test it out thoroughly. What we're just going to do is hold down the power button and we'll slide this around our brand new glass. And look at that, we've got good, perfect touch. Got no blemishes, no dust, no bubbles, nothing under there. So now we're just going to close this on up, push it down around the sides. All right, so I'm going to go around the border with some acetone. There's a teeny bit of residue from the adhesive that we put on the bezel, and I'm just going to clean that off just like that. I'll get rid of my fingerprints, grab the pentalobe screws, and screw them on down just like that. All right, and this phone is as good as new. And there you go. That is how to replace the glass only on an iPhone. There are other techniques throughout the process, so if you have something to share, leave it in the comments below. One thing I'll mention, there is a way to apply adhesive to the bezel before installing the glass, and I obviously didn't show it, but it basically consists of being extremely accurate with the cold press glue, getting a nice fine bead down the top of the bezel without it puddling up too much to where it's going to squeeze over onto the display, creating a bubble or having the adhesive actually show on the clear side of the glass. If there's something that you'd like to see in a future video, leave it in the comments below as well. Like the video if you enjoyed this type of content. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.